Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about the BJP lacking strong regional leaders ahead of the upcoming assembly polls and the concerns it raises for the party. We also discuss a new study that talks about the catastrophic changes that the planet will soon witness. But first, we talk about the Bilkis Bano case. During the Gujarat riots of 2002, Bilkis Bano, who was pregnant at the time, was brutally assaulted and gang-raped by a mob. The men who did this also killed her 3-year-old daughter. The case has been in the news because earlier this year in August, the 11 men who were convicted in the case and had been awarded life imprisonment were released by the Gujarat government for their quote-unquote good behavior. And the thing to note is that even while they were serving sentences, all of them were granted temporary releases through paroles, furloughs, and temporary bails. In fact, Indian Express's Sohini Ghosh found out that 10 out of the 11 men were out of jail for more than 1,000 days each, and the 11th convict was out for 998 days. And this is important because while they were out of jail, there were complaints about witnesses getting threatened and even some offences that were registered against these men. Sohini tells us about them.
So, in June 2020, an FIR was registered at Randikpur police station, where basically the allegation was against two of the convicts, Mitesh Bhatt and Radheshyam Shah. Now, allegedly, the complainant, a woman, her daughter's modesty had been outraged, was the basic complaint. The FIR basically states this, that she had gone to Radheshyam Shah's house because there were some pending legal issues that they wanted some clarification on. When Radheshyam Shah and Mitesh Bhatt started recording the entire exchange, and then a scuffle broke out, and the final allegation was that Shah and Bhatt had misbehaved with the complainant's daughter. So IPC section 354 was slapped in this FIR, and also there was a cross FIR by Radheshyam Shah. Both these cases are now before a trial court and they are pending. So in a way, both Radheshyam Shah and Mitesh Bhatt, they had this FIR of 2020 going against them, especially when the FIR has allegations of outraging the modesty of a woman.
And she says that when authorities were looking at granting these men early releases, this incident was mentioned by the local superintendent of police in Dahod, and even Bilkis Bano herself had mentioned it.
So the SP Dahod then had taken the opinion of Bilkis Bano and her relatives whether that such application has come before us by Radheshyam Shah seeking premature release. What is your opinion on this? Wherein Bilkis Bano had in very clear terms said that he should not be released.
And similarly, during the time that these convicts were out of jail, other witnesses in the case had made representations and filed complaints to various authorities in 2017 and 2018.
Where these witnesses had basically said that we are being threatened by the family members of the convicts, that we can kill you right now because anyway these guys are in jail, so no one is going to care about you if we kill you or harm you in any way. Then there were the State Reserve Police Force protection that was also given to some of the members that was withdrawn, so there was an objection raised regarding that as well. So, at least according to the witnesses, they do say there were memorandum and representations made regarding such indiscretions. But when we see the affidavit of the Gujarat government that has been submitted before the Supreme Court, which also includes all the documents that were taken into consideration while granting them early release, at least when you come to the pages of the opinion of the SP Dahod regarding such release, they very categorically state that we did not receive any memorandum, any representation, and there is no FIR lodged against the said convicts, and thus we are going to give you a go-ahead or a green light. Of course, I'm talking about 10 of the 11 convicts because as we know, for Radheshyam's case, one of the convict, there was a negative opinion from several of the authorities.
And in fact, the early release of these convicts started with Radheshyam filing a petition with the Supreme Court saying that they wanted to be released early.
We also need to remember the fact that Radheshyam himself is academically a lawyer. He was a practicing lawyer before he was incarcerated. So he had moved a petition saying that we want to be released early, but there's a dispute as to which remission policy should be considered and under whose jurisdiction, because it was not clear whether the Gujarat government should be looking at it or the Maharashtra government. Maharashtra government figures into this because the trial of the case had taken place in Mumbai, in the jurisdiction of Maharashtra. So ultimately, the Supreme Court had ruled that this would be under the Gujarat government's ambit and the remission policy applicable at the time of their conviction would apply here. So that would be a 1992 policy. The next policy had come in 2014 and these guys were convicted in 2008.
So considering this fact, the 1992 remission policy was used. And this helped them because Sohini says that the new remission policy, the one that came up in 2014, said that those convicted of gang rape and murder cannot be considered for remission.
But the 1992 policy had no such exceptions. So that gave these 11 convicts an upper hand, wherein without such exceptions being at play, they could actually be considered for remission. So based on this 1992 policy, various opinions were sought as per the legal process, wherein you had to get an opinion from the CBI, that is the investigating agency. You had to get an opinion from the trial court where they were tried. So that would be the special CBI court in Mumbai. Then opinions were also sought from the superintendent of police of Dahod, collector of Dahod. There was the jail advisory committee.
And after that, more opinions were sought and were eventually sent to the Gujarat Home Department, which endorsed it and finally sent it to the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. And it was the Ministry of Home Affairs that finally gave the approval to release these convicts. This decision faced a lot of criticism, both from large sections of the public and the opposition. But leaders within the BJP have continued to support it.
So, of course, we had heard C.K. Raolji, who was part of the jail advisory committee, a BJP guy who endorsed their release on the ground that they are good Brahmins with sanskar. So that was one reaction we had. Now we have Union Minister Prahlad Joshi saying that everything was done as per legal provisions. Now, these appear as very stock statements because at a very, very preliminary glance, you would say, yes, it was done as per legal provisions. But a very, very simple example would be that of Radheshyam Shah. Now, his application was the first to be sent out, which was in August 2019, compared to the others, the other 10 who had applied only in February 2021. So, with respect to Radheshyam Shah, we see negative opinion being given by the SP of Dahod. We see a negative opinion from the Dahod collector. We see a negative opinion from the Additional Director General of Prisons. We also see a negative opinion from one of the 10 members of the Jail Advisory Committee. The dissenting member was the Principal District Judge of Godhra, who was part of the committee, and he had basically dissented to the release. So when we had so many negative opinions, we have the victim and her families categorically saying that they don't want him released. When all these opinions are being taken, what is the weightage of it if you're not going to factor this in your ultimate endorsement?
She says that when BJP leaders say that things were done according to the legal process, they are right, because there is a paper trail for this, but adds that there was no application of the mind on their part, at least in Radheshyam's case.
Because we then see the Gujarat Home Department, while sending its letter to the MHA in June 2022, they are endorsing Radheshyam Shah's release along with the 10 others. So technically they're sending out one common letter for all 11. And then we have the MHA responding with its approval in July 2022 for all 11 again. Also, there was this part about the guidelines saying that there should not be a wholesale release of prisoners when remission policy is being applied. So the question remains there, that is releasing 11 people, does that qualify as wholesale, especially when there were several negative opinions against at least one of the convicts?
Right now, a number of people have come forward to challenge the early release of these convicts, including TMC leader Mahua Moitra and CPI Marxist leader Subhashini Ali. But the Gujarat government in turn have challenged these petitions.
The basic argument that has been put forth is contesting the locus standi of these petitioners because they were in no way involved with the case. So apart from what has been submitted by the Gujarat government through its affidavit before the court, one of the arguments that I believe we are going to see is on the maintainability of the petitions, because of course locus does become an argument here, and we need to see how that pans out over the days.
And next we talk about the upcoming state elections. The elections in Gujarat are going to take place later this year, and a little less than a month is left before they take place in Himachal Pradesh, both states where the BJP is currently in power. But despite the fact that the polls are so close and leaders are campaigning aggressively for it, the BJP hasn't yet decided who the next chief ministers are going to be. Both the current chief ministers, Jairam Thakur of Himachal Pradesh and Bhupendra Patel of Gujarat, are not being backed by BJP's central leadership, at least not yet. And one big reason for this is that they're not really seen as strong regional leaders. When we spoke to Indian Express's Liz Mathew, who reports on the party for the paper, she told us that this is actually a big problem within the BJP right now.
See, BJP was a party which had, the BJP 2.0, or if you are considering the current one as 3.0, the BJP 2.0 under the leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Lal Krishna Advani, they allowed the regional leadership to emerge as strong, mainly the 3-4 people, including current Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, then Shivraj Singh Chauhan in Madhya Pradesh, Vasundhara Raje in Rajasthan, and Raman Singh in Chhattisgarh.
She points out that all these people came up under the leadership of the former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and L.K. Advani. All of them, she says, were unquestionable leaders in their own regions.
And that was the kind of culture the BJP used to have. But under the current leadership, under Prime Minister Modi, Amit Shah duo, you can see that they keep changing the chief ministers. So unlike in the past when you knew that this person or this particular leader is going to be BJP's chief ministerial face, since 2014 we have been seeing very unexpected emergence of leaders like Devendra Fadnavis was not expected, Raghubar Das in Jharkhand was not expected, Manohar Lal Khattar in Haryana was not expected. These leaders were also not in line with this caste combination usually the parties would follow, the majority or the most significant caste would be represented at the top leadership. That was not kept. Even in here, now when we are talking about Himachal Pradesh election, Jairam Thakur was not the chief ministerial candidate. He emerged after the election and he has been there for 5 years. There is no sign that he would continue as the chief minister, primarily because he is not so popular. The party leaders admit it. Also, going by the BJP leadership's versions, they do not want to change the chief minister immediately, ahead of the election or something. They wouldn't say that we are not going to have this particular person, leader, as the chief minister during the election time, because in a way it is a kind of judgment on the government on which they are trying to campaign on.
If they were to change the chief minister, In a way, it would be admitting that his tenure was a failure. And Liz says that this would be a problem for the BJP because the party likes to highlight development in their campaigns.
But we have been getting reports that even Jairam Thakur's posters were getting removed from Himachal as the elections were announced. Okay, Jairam Thakur is there, but whether he will be repeated, the parliamentary board will decide. So this is the refrain they have been keeping. The same case in Gujarat, the other state which is going for assembly elections in this year itself. So if you look at Gujarat, you can see that Narendra Modi ji was the chief minister from 2001 to 2014. After that, 2014 to 2021, there were three chief ministers. Anandiben Patel, Vijay Rupani, now 21, Bhupendra Patel was appointed as the chief minister. Even now, they are not very clear that whether they will going to have Bhupendra Patel as the chief minister post-elections if the BJP comes back to power. So that uncertainty is always there.
In the BJP, almost all decisions are taken by the central leadership, and the members readily comply with it. For example, Vijay Rupani was told to resign within less than 24 hours, and he did so without making any noise about it, which is not something you would see in other parties.
There are two claims they made. It's a very disciplined party, so there is no cadre party. So the moment the leadership decides this person is no longer going to be there, the person obliges, unlike in the Congress where the leaders will shout and kicks and this, throwing fates. It is not going to happen in BJP. That's what they say. Another way they are interpreting or terming this kind of the repeated changes or frequent leadership, change of guards. What they say is that ours is a party which has a very strong democracy. So we are giving opportunity to more leaders. So they say that, we have more chief ministers, like ex-chief ministers, than the Congress now, which was in power for several decades.
She also says that the reason why the party has changed chief ministers in the past is due to their incompetence. And Vijay Rupani is an example of that.
Bhupendra Patel was appointed because Vijay Rupani was not doing good, and the BJP itself was in doubt that whether they can go to election with Vijay Rupani as the head of the government. So that is why Bhupendra Patel was appointed. Even in Uttarakhand, we have seen there were three chief ministers. Dhami was appointed just ahead of election, a few months ahead of election. So it is also because of the incompetence of the leaders. In a way, it is showing the failure of the party system in producing or bringing out very strong leaders at the regional level.
She says that because of the centralization of power within the BJP, there is no second-rung leadership in many states. And that means for the assembly elections, the party right now can only rely on the images of PM Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah.
There is a certitude in who is going to be the party's face or on whose popularity they are going to bank on in all the state election, whether it is Tripura or whether it is Gujarat or whether it is Karnataka, the image or the mascot will be the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And the organization will be whether it will be the able hands of Mr. Amit Shah, and now, the party president is there. So that is how things are. But the popularity of a chief minister, it happened only in the recent election. It only happened in Uttar Pradesh, where Yogi Adityanath is still popular. Okay, even Pramod Sawant, Goa repeated. Biren Singh is repeated in Manipur. But they did not win the election on their popularity. It is basically the BJP's organization strength and the Prime Minister's popularity. In Assam, they didn't tell us or they didn't tell the public who is going to be the chief minister till the last moment. Post-election, they decided Himanta Biswa to be the Chief Minister of Assam and Bananda Sonowal will come to the center. So here it is, the center, a strong, heavy, strong center and a very weak states. That's what the BJP is now.
Now Liz says that the party leaders have no doubt that PM Modi remains the most popular leader in the country. And without him, the party would struggle electorally. But there are people who question the way power is being centralized.
They wouldn't say the national leadership, how they are not taking into account many other facts. Or there are some old school leaders who still feel that there should be regional leadership. So post this leadership era, what will happen to BJP? So that's a question. As long as you are not letting another strong leadership, young leadership or second-rung leadership to emerge, what is party's future? Even if you have a very robust organization at the ground level, there has to be a leadership because, the biggest advantage for Narendra Modi at the helm of affairs is that his image as a decisive leader. So without a decisive leader, even if you have a strong organization, it may not be easy to win election in a country like India.
And she says that this is something that is there in the minds of many BJP leaders, but they don't have any place where they can voice these concerns.
So that is still coming a weakness because some people call it the congressization of the BJP, not in this term, but in several other terms, the way the state leadership behaves and several other issues they say. But as of now, the system is in place. The central leadership, like top heavy central leadership is in place. They will decide the strategy. They will decide the leaders. Others on the ground just have to follow.
And in the end, we talk about climate change. Over the years, because of humans burning fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas, a lot of carbon dioxide and other pollutants have been released in our atmosphere. This has led to global temperatures increasing. Right now, on average, there has been a rise of about 1.1 degrees Celsius, and this is increasing rapidly. And so a lot of conversation around climate change has been that we need to keep the global temperatures between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees Celsius. Because if we fail to do that, then the planet would face a lot of catastrophic events, including daily hurricanes, permanent droughts, extreme heat waves, and drastic sea level rise that would lead to the death of millions of humans and animals. But now a new report published in the Science Journal says that we will witness many of these events even at our current temperatures. Events that we thought would only happen at 5 degrees Celsius. When we spoke to Indian Express's Amitabh Sinha, he told us about the report.
So what the paper is saying is that the current level of warming is also not a very comfortable place for us to be in. And what is worse, that some of the irreversible events could possibly have even started to take place, even at the current level of warming. And it just, not that climate change was not a serious threat earlier, it was already a very serious threat. What this paper tends to do is to make this threat even more serious than what we thought earlier.
Amitabh says that over the years, scientists have discussed tipping points, events that would make certain changes on the planet irreversible, after which there will be no turning back, like the ice melting in the polar regions.
Now, what happens is the ice in the polar region is already melting, and we know it's melting at an accelerating rate. Now, what happens is once a tipping point is reached, wherein the rate of melting reaches a certain point, then what happens is as more and more ice melts, the height of the ice core or the ice sheet, that decreases, and that decreases at a more rapid rate. And the more the height decreases, the more the ice sheet gets exposed to warmer air, because air at lower altitudes is warmer than air at the higher altitudes. So what happens is, as more and more ice melts, a larger fraction of the ice sheet gets exposed to warmer air, which in turn leads to more ice melting. And then it becomes a cyclic process, and it becomes self-perpetuating. There is no going back. There is no arresting that phenomena.
So that is an example of one tipping point. Another example is the rate of deforestation in the Amazon, the world's largest tropical rainforest.
And they have a very, very important role in the climate cycle across the world. And one of the functions that it does is produces rains in the region. They are instrumental in getting rains in the region. Now, the tipping point discussion is like this. The more the trees are cut in the Amazon, the rains get impacted and the rains go down, which in turn actually means that less and less trees will grow because trees would also be dependent on the rains. So less rains means less trees means less rain. So again, it gets into a cyclic process.
And these tipping points are supposed to take place between a range of temperatures. And what this new paper says is that the lower range for some of these tipping point events has already been achieved.
1.1 degree is very much well within the lower ranges of the triggering points for some of these events. So there is a possibility, and because you cannot immediately know, these are very large processes which would bring significant large changes across the globe. So even to know whether it has already started, we would take a few years and very comprehensive studies. But what the scientists are suggesting is that it is possible that some of these events might already have been triggered. And they go on to further say that between 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, which is what we are aiming at. And in fact, our efforts as of now are not enough even to arrest the temperature rise to within 2 degrees centigrade. Probably it will rise much more if we don't make more efforts. But what this paper says is that even if we achieve 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees centigrade target, at that point of time, there would be another set of events that would get triggered. And again, these would be large events, irreversible, and would lead to large-scale changes, sea level rise, melting of glaciers, melting of ice cores, large-scale deforestation, the release of carbon from the permafrost, layers in the permanently frozen zones of the world. So huge implications they point to.
Amitabh says that even though this is perhaps the most serious climate warning in recent times, it is unlikely that it will change any policy response.
In fact, at this point of time, there are greater challenges to policy responses, and one of them coming from the Ukraine war itself, which is slowing down the progress being made on climate action, mainly because of the kind of energy that is being used. The energy supply lines are getting increasingly choked, and countries are falling more and more on traditional sources of energy. In fact, that is a new pressure point that has been there. So it's likely to slow down the progress, in fact, rather than any large scale, any significant increase in the ambition of countries' action on climate change.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.